Kia ora, coders. This is a quick video on, well, maybe not that quick, on how to make a memory game using sounds that you can do in Scratch. Okay, so a student came to me with this thing that she'd made, and she'd added 5 instruments, and she had managed to make sure that when you click the instrument, it played the right sound. Every instrument, when you load up an instrument from the magnifying glass here, it actually loads in with all of the sounds of that instrument, like that, those individual notes. So that was quite simple. So just when I click, so I dragged on. So she dragged on when I click this sprite, and then she dragged on the start sound code. Nice and simple. But she asked me how to turn it into a game, and I said, well, could be quite good as a memory game if it could play randomly the 5 instruments in a random order, and then you have to click what you've just heard in the right order, and maybe you get a point every time you get one right. So that would turn it into a little memory game. Like any game, you'd need a play again button, and I thought with this one you might want to hear the 5 random sounds again to see if you can sort of jog your memory to play it in the right order. Okay, so that would turn it into a game. So let's have a look at how this game works. I'm going to start on the play again button because that's where I've put my really important code that I put on every single game I make, and that is that when I click the play again, it just broadcasts to start a new game, which is exactly what the green flag does as well. All right. Then everything in my game is just waiting to receive the start game message, which in this case, for the play again button, of course, I can now do the other thing I do to every single game is I create a variable setting called game so that I can set the game setting as either on or over. And then everything in my game knows if it's on, then they know what to do, and if it's over, they know what to stop and either disappear or do what they do. So this is what I do in every single game. So set game as on. So I made a variable called game. And of course, this button then hides and it waits until game is over before it re-shows again, and I can click play again. And that's generally what I do on pretty much all my games in Scratch. So that's how to start the game. So let's have a look at the instruments. That's pretty simple, but it's got one important thing I want to point out. So again, when the start game here, so everyone can receive a start game message, and when they get that, then this in every instrument just does the show code. And then when I've done that, because it applies to every instrument, I can drag that down onto my other instruments when I've got them, and they all get that piece of code. Okay. The other thing that all the instruments have to do is that when they're clicked, what I need to do is I need to remember write down in another setting called the instrument guess. So I've made another one called instrument guess. I need to write down the name of that sound. Okay, so their guess has got to be the exact correct name that's used actually in the sound library. You can see on all the sounds they have proper names, and you've got to make sure you actually type, when you change the setting for their guess, you can type the actual real name of that sound and get it spelt correctly. And then what happens is, as you may not have done yet, is it allows me to then put their guess, now that it's been set as the C2 guitar in this case, and I can actually put their guess into the sound to play. So as long as I've got the name right, that's the sound it's going to play, and it's now going to play their guess. Then I've created a message so that I can code it separately just to go away and check their guess on the random list. And if it's the next one on the list, then they must be doing it in the right order. So that's what I thought. Then the instrument hides. Okay, so I know that I've clicked that one. So that's what every instrument does. It just sets the name of the sound for that instrument, puts that in as their latest guess. It changes the guess to that one, and then goes and checks their guess on the list. Pretty simple. Now, brace yourself, because I'm now going to show you the crazy code I did for coming up with how am I going to get it to take the 5 sounds and create a new random order every time of these sound names so that I can compare it with the guess that they've made. So here we go. I'm going to take you through this slowly, and it's not as hard as it looks. So on the backdrop, I've put all of the sort of the thinking code for the game. All right, so let's zoom in on this so you can't see too much other code. It gets a bit frightening if you do. But it makes sense when you take it a stage at a time. So when the start game message comes in for the backdrop, it switches to game on. That's this black background. just call it game on. So you can name it. It's important to name your backdrops. I've got game on, I've got wrong when they get the one wrong, and I've got the winner if they get it all right. Okay, you can see there the backdrop. Okay, so it switches to game on. It sets points to 0. That's really important. If you have got points in your game, that you've got to make sure it's always reset to 0 at the start of every game. And what I've got is I've got two lists. So a list is like an orange variable, but instead of just saving one bit of information, it allows you to save a list and then code what you're going to do with different items on the list. You see, so it's really useful. So I've got an instrument list and a random instrument list. That allows me to always set up the instrument names of the sounds as the 5 sounds available, and it allows me to code it to mix that up in a random list every time. That's how I'm doing it. So let's have a look at this. So first of all, I hide the lists because I don't want them on show, because that would be too easy if you could see the list. And then look, I broadcast a message to fill the instrument list. So I've got to get the names into the game, the correct sound names. So let's go to that first. Broadcast fill instrument list. Well, down here you can see, very simple. When I receive fill instrument list, I just delete the instrument list, which is this one here, first of all, and then I just add the 5 names of the sounds. So C2 guitar, F trumpet into the instrument list, making sure that I've got the right list here. And that's just, there it is. Just add the 5 names of the sounds to the instrument list. Done. And when that's run, you can see it just puts them all in. Right, now what else is this backdrop doing? This backdrop is just waiting for half a second to allow the list to fill up, and then it broadcasts fill random list. Okay, so I've filled the first list. Now I'm going to fill the random list, but do it by grabbing the instrument list in a random order, so I end up in a mixed up here. Here we go. Delete all of the random list that's already there. All right, so that's going to clear the random list for a new one, and then repeat until the length of the random list, because of course it's going to add one at a time. So the length of the list at the beginning is 1, and then when I've added another one, it's going to be 2. So I need to go repeat this from the repeat until the list is as long as the 5 names. Okay, does that make sense? So that's that's just to make it force it to do 5 loops, 5, right. So for each thing on the list, what I do is, again, I've got a list position. Now that's just a number, it's just a setting, and I set that so that it randomly picks a number from 1 until the end of the instrument list, this one. The one that I filled with all the names. All right. Now you'll see in a minute why I've said instead of saying 1 to 5, I've said 1 to the length of the list. That's because I don't want it to have the guitar go twice into the random list. So I've got if I add the guitar, if it randomly picked number 1 and added the guitar, I need to get the guitar off the instrument list so it doesn't pick it again. So you can see here, look. So if it picked a random number 1, or let's say out of 1 to 5. It would add item 1, because that's what it's set list position to, of the instrument list, which is the guitar, into the random list. But if it randomly picked the number 3, then it would be adding item 3 of the instrument list onto the random list. All right, then, very importantly, it deletes number 3, if it's randomly picked 3, off the instrument list. So it would add the saxophone into number 1 on the random list, and then it would delete sax so it couldn't be picked again. Then, when it repeats, of course, it repeats until random list is 5, and it hasn't done 5 yet, but it sets the list position now from 1 to 4, because the length of the instrument list has gone down. So it now will at least pick up the right sort of random number 1 to 4. And then it adds 1 to 4, whichever one it picks from the instrument list to the random list, and then deletes that number 4, whatever random number it's picked, off the instrument list. So that's how I worked out how to transfer the 5 names in a random different order every time into the random list. And because they're not on show, it's doing all of that in secret in the background. Right, let's go back up to the main program here for starting the game. So we've filled the instrument list, we've now moved that and filled the random list, and now we need to play the new random list. Well, that's quite simple. when I receive play the new random list, I reset the list position back to number 1, because all I want to do now is just play 1 to 5. So here we go, repeat until list position, which is 1 at the moment, equals the length of the random list, which in this game is 5, okay, because there's 5 instruments. I just play item 1 off the random list, wait a second, and then move list position up by 1 to number 2. And then when it repeats round again, it will play item 2 off the random list, and then it will make it up to number 3, and it will repeat, and it will play number 3 on the random list. And because the random list has got the actual sound names, all of this item list position of random list is actually, of course, just the name of the sound to play, because that's what's on the list. There you go. There you go. So then I broadcast show here again, which is the green button, and the green button is waiting for that. And when it receives show here again, it shows the green button there, you see. And you can see at the start of the game, it hides that green button. All right. And when it's clicked, because I've set it up as a separate little bit of code, then this button can also just play new random list, which of course is the thing I just showed you here. So again, that's 2 parts of the game able to run this section of code because I gave it a name, and they're both waiting to receive that broadcast message. Awesome. So then the last thing I need to say in this video is, how do I check their guess against the one on the list? Well, look at this. So every time I click an instrument, it says check guess on list. So here it's very simple. If the instrument guess, because they've clicked the guitar, for example, is the guitar sound. If the instrument guess is number 1 on the random list, then, of course, I need to delete that off the random list because they got it right. I add the points because they've got scored a point. And if points is 5, then I broadcast winner, and that will change the background to winner. All right. So that's basically what, if they get it right, then yes, brilliant, that's number 1. And because it deletes, the next instrument will now be number 1, so it's ready for the next guest. If they get it wrong, it just switches to the wrong background, the wrong red backdrop. I've randomly decided to play a rooster sound as a wrong guess sound, and then it shows the list to show them what the actual next one was, and it sets game to over, and everything reacts to that, and the game is over. So that's basically getting the guess right or getting it wrong with an if or an else. And I think that is the game of guessing, using lists, using randomization on lists, and doing all of that with using the variables for guessing and things inside the sound code, so that so I can change what sound it's going to play. Thanks, guys. Okay, have fun with that if you want to. Kia ora.